the third chapter of the book, it's called How to Scratch a Poor Man's Nose. And this is taken from another quote from my grandfather, who would, upon seeing some unsuspecting dolt make a foolish financial decision, he would mumble, "That's how you scratch a poor man's nose." Now, he didn't always use that phraseology. I have changed that a little bit from what he would say. But you get the idea. There are all kinds of mistakes that we make. And so the way this chapter is laid out, I give bad ideas that people do. And so the obvious meaning of this chapter is to do the opposite. So I talk about some of the things I talk about. One of the things that you should do, or if you want to scratch a poor man's nose, is that you should not keep a budget. And so not keeping up with where your money goes, that's a really great way to scratch a poor man's nose. Another thing I talk about is just random monthly subscriptions. There's a lot of ways that money leaks out of your pockets. And one of the easiest ways that happens is through monthly subscriptions. And so I talk a lot about that. Talk about how people use monthly subscriptions, how much people spend on a monthly basis, and the numbers are quite shocking. Another part of the chapter, I talk about buying a new car versus buying a used car. And so for you Dave Ramsey fans out there, I think this would be a Dave Ramsey approved strategy. I advocate buying used cars instead of new cars. And I talk about just put real numbers to it. Like, say you bought a new car for every few years in your life versus a used car, and what that can mean for your savings over a lifetime. In the fourth chapter, I talk about financial planning strategies, some real practical strategies. The name of the chapter is Don't Put All Your Eggs in One Basket, but if you do, keep your eye on that basket. And of course, that is an allusion to diversification and why diversification is so important. I'll talk about a lot of other things in this chapter, not just diversification, but expenses. One of the things that's real important in looking at your investments is what are the expenses on the funds that you use. And so the higher the expense, the worse expected return you're going to have in the long run. I talk about some other really simple strategies. One thing is just systematic investment. Especially is relevant today when the market is down, because you want to be buying as the market goes down, and so it's important to do that. Another strategy that I talk about is tax diversification. You've got your Roth investments, you've got your IRAs, you've got your regular accounts, and how to strategically build your portfolio with the different types of accounts that you have. So there's some strategy for that. Along with that, we talk about asset location. Which investments do you put in which accounts? So in a Roth account, there are different tax variables about how that account works. And so that means that there are investments that are more suited for the Roth IRA versus a regular IRA versus a regular account, just an account that you hold that's a taxable account. And so I talk about asset location in this chapter as well. And then I wrap up the chapter with rebalancing, and that's just basically a systematic way to make you do the right thing. In order to win in stock investing, you have to buy low and sell high, and that's what rebalancing does. It's just an automatic way of doing that. When one investment does poorly, you sell the investments that have done well relative to that investment and buy the investment that's done poorly over time. But I talk more about that in this chapter and give you a strategy for how you can do that.